Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of High Energy Girl. And today's high energy guest is Ilene Smith, who is a Somatic Experiencing Practitioner. And this work that she does helps people move through trauma, working the central nervous system. And we had a great conversation. She is a total high energy girl and has helped many, many people across the world heal from their traumatic experiences and their chronic stress. So let's go and say hello to Ilene. Hey everyone, welcome to High Energy Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluhite, health coach and personal trainer and founder of HighEnergyGirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you encouragement or an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode. Please also join our awesome Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and I'm looking forward to see you on the inside of that group and hope you enjoy today's show. If you're a woman trying to age stronger, it's really difficult to get enough protein because there's only so much room in your stomach, right? Well, I have good news for you. My favorite protein is called Prime Protein, and the reason I like it is because I don't get the bloating and gas that I get from the regular whey protein. Also, it only has 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, cocoa powder, and stevia. So it's super clean and it tastes great too. I mix it in yogurt or coconut milk, make a smoothie with spinach. It's just so versatile and it's so delicious. I even can mix it in a cup of coffee in the blender. The other thing I like is called Smart Sleep, and I mix it with water and psyllium husk every night before bed. It tastes kind of like a sweet tart, so it's pretty yummy. And it has herbs like chamomile, lemon balm, rhodiola, L-leucine and L-theanine, and valerian root extract. It also has vitamin B6, magnesium, and zinc. It helps so much. I sleep like a baby most every night. So go ahead and check out these amazing products at bit.ly/EquipPro. EQUIPPRO. And you can check out these delicious and amazing products so you can age stronger and healthier instead of sicker and weaker. Hey, Ilene, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I am super excited to talk to you. So, but for the listeners that don't know about you yet, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
So I am a Somatic Experience Practitioner. So I'll explain what that is in a minute. And I work basically to heal trauma, and I'm working with the body and to trying to bring the body into the healing process. I've also written a book called Moving Beyond Trauma that's available on Amazon. And I'm really sharing this, my own personal journey in my process of sharing information, because I think what I've learned over time is that healing is really possible no matter where you are.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. And especially since it sounds like you've been there, done that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had quite a journey myself, like many of us. And I had to navigate the hard way. I just kind of kept bumping into walls until I was like, oh, I'm like, this finally makes sense.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start about your history and how you came to where you are now? Or do you want to explain somatic experience first?
So I think I'd like to share my personal journey. Perfect. And then that will lead us into a little bit about what somatic experiencing is.
Awesome.
So I grew up in a very chaotic house. Mm-hmm. And, to the point where I knew at 6 years old that I had to get out. And I literally found a sleepaway camp and told my parents that the sleepaway camp director is coming to the house and I'm going to go to camp for 8 weeks. You guys need to be interviewed. And so at 6, like my little body intuitively knew I needed to get out of there.
Wow.
Yeah. So, right. I think this is just an important point. As children, we're so uninhibited, and we have way more capacity than adults a lot of the time to really listen to what our bodies are asking. And so I grew up in this very chaotic environment, went off to college, wound up with every form of an eating disorder you could possibly find through the gamut of the years, wound up with exercise addiction, and spent many, many years in talk therapy. And by the time I got to 40, I understood all my issues, could tell you the root cause of every one of my triggers. And yet I was still felt like a dysregulated mess. I was over exercising. I had just gotten married for the first time, and I was very reactive. And I'm like, if I know what all my issues are, like, why can't I still not regulate myself? And this is after, years of yoga, which probably saved me from, it helped me because it helped me create a certain kind of embodiment. And, I've been working on my recovery, and in my early 40s, I went back to school to get a master's in mental health counseling. And I was finishing up my internship, and I was introduced to somatic experiencing. And I'll get into a little bit more of what it is later, but essentially it's a body-based therapeutic modality that helps bring the body into the healing process to release trauma from your body. And there's a million ways that somatic experiencing does that, but that was the big idea. And as a student of the work, I also became a patient. And it was like the first thing that made sense to me. I'm like, I can't solve for everything in my head. There has to be an embodiment piece. And so I became a student of the work, and it's a 3-year training. And I really took a deep dive in as a patient of the work. And I started noticing how different my nervous system felt. I felt like I was actually regulated. I wasn't reactive. I was able to observe more. I felt safer in my own system. I felt no matter what was going on around me, I was getting less stressed. So there was this building a safe container and having more balance in my nervous system. And then in 2016, my husband died suddenly. It's like, boom, like my whole life in 3 seconds just like was turned upside down.
So sorry.
Thank you. And for the first time in my life, I let people support me. I didn't completely isolate. I didn't go into any eating disorder behavior. I didn't overexercise, and I stayed connected. And I really attribute that to the work, the somatic experiencing work, and really healing my traumas at a very different level. So I'm a big believer in the work. And I really, really believe that we have to bring the body into the healing process, and we have to start creating what I call a healing lifestyle. And it's really the slower we go, the faster we're going to get there.
I like that. That sounds
Thank you.
Really good. Okay, so I have to be honest, I'm unfamiliar with somatic healing. My son's girlfriend was just telling me about it a couple weeks ago, that she loves it. That she went to a practitioner down in LA, and I've never had it done, but it sounds really, really fascinating. So can you explain how it works?
Sure. So if you ever watch animals in the wild, they have an innate ability. They don't get traumatized, and they have an innate ability to shake off their trauma. Like if they're under threat, if you ever notice, they eventually shake their bodies and then they move on. And that shaking, what we call biological completion, is the way that they reset their nervous systems. And so we as human beings have the same need. The problem is we developed a neocortex, right? The higher functioning part of the brain, which has been amazing, right? We can make more complex decisions when we have a problem. We have more complex strategies to defend ourselves. It's the way we don't just walk around like punching someone if we feel threatened. The problem is it's moved us away from those earlier mechanisms of shaking and releasing that energy from the body to reset our nervous systems. And as our society has become more and more of I would just say, we're going to solve the problem by thinking our way through it, even though the body is the problem is in our bodies, all of our emotions are stored in our bodies. We have moved further and further away from our innate ability to just release that trauma from the body. So somatic experiencing essentially is working to help you release all that trauma energy that's locked in the body. Because we think about trauma, we think of it as an event, but it's really energy that gets locked in our bodies around real or perceived threat. So why do we think we're going to solve it by higher functioning part of the brain? Because trauma is actually stored in the lower functioning parts of the brain, what we call the reptilian brain. Mm-hmm. And the language of the reptilian brain is all sensation. And so we're basically working with sensations and imagery to basically jump into what needs to be released in the body.
Interesting. So I walk into your office. I'm like new patient or whatever you call us. And walk me through like the experience, like, because Olivia was telling me that it was like a 2.5 hour appointment with her girl.
Okay. So, I mean, we all work differently.
Right.
But the first thing is we're not like traditional talk therapy, right? You go in and basically it's like, tell me what happened when you're 5. We don't do that in somatic experiencing. We're kind of approaching it from a different perspective. So it's going to be more like, what's going on in your life now? What are you noticing that doesn't feel right? And we're going to kind of use the framework of what's happening with the nervous system and what's happening in the body to try to start figuring out what the entry points are to start managing the nervous system and build the body as a safe container. So with new clients, the first thing I'm going to do is educate them, because a lot of times people show up in my office and they really believe that it's their fault, that like, why can't I get it together? What's wrong with me? There's always a lot of that and a lot of shame. So education, in my opinion, is the first step in helping somebody build that safe container in their own system. And so a lot of times what I'll notice is when I start explaining that it's not their fault and this is how you got here and this is what's going on with your nervous system, there's often like that in itself is regulating for the nervous system. Just the idea that that they're starting to make meaning of their experiences. And that tends to just throw this in there. That's why I wrote this book, because there was no good information out there for the average person who doesn't understand trauma and the nervous system. So that's step one. And eventually what we're doing is, I'll invite my clients to share whatever they want to share, but also to let them understand we're going to talk in here, but what we're doing is we're really trying to get to the real story of what's locked in the body. So I'll give you a snapshot of what it might look like. When a client might come in and I might say, what do you want to work on today? So let's take this particular client named Ben. And Ben came to me, he was 20 something years old. And he came to me because he was really struggling at work. He's like, I feel like I'm a little paranoid. He's like, I feel like everyone's ganging up on me. I'm misinterpreting and unsure if somebody says something to me. Are they really on my side? So he had this inability to sense safety and danger accurately. And Ben was an only child. He was bullied as a kid, and he kind of never really got past it. So he's still thinking his peers and people his own age are out to get him, or that there's some sort of danger.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So he came in one day. So we've been working together for probably about 6 or 8 weeks. And he came in this one particular day and he's like, I keep having this memory come up. I said, okay, let's talk about the memory. And he shares with me that at 14, he was in sleepaway camp. And these 3 boys pinned him down and they tickled him until he was crying. He was hyperventilating and crying. And I said, okay, I said, Ben, if there was one person that could have been there with you, who would you have wanted there with you? And he says to me, he said, I had a friend down the street named Carl. And Carl was like my only friend. And he was the only person that I ever felt really accepted by. And I said, okay, let's invite Carl in. I said, tell me a little bit about Carl. So what I'm doing now is I'm building a little bit of resourcing and helping him find his sense of safety. So Carl was the safe person. And so then we went on, we walked through what was going on, what he was doing before, the kids, we walked through the whole situation. And I said to him, so if Carl was there, what would you have done? What would you and Carl have done to defend you? And he starts going, Carl would have pulled this one off. He's like, and I would have been punching and screaming and punching and kicking. And he kept this biological completion that I'm talking about. He kept moving his body and he kept punching and kicking and punching and kicking. And this went on for 15 minutes. He's crying and he's punching and kicking. And there was like an energy discharge from his body when he was finished. And that to me is like a perfect SE session. And there's the biological completion that we're talking about that animals have, that we as human beings have the need to. So essentially what we did was we walked him through the situation, but this time he had a sense of mastery over it. And he had this ability to defend himself. And he had a safe person. So his body got to experience it differently.
Interesting. So basically, because he moved his body, he was able to release that block,
that energy, think about all that stored energy for all those years that's locked in his body, with all that threat energy was locked in his body.
Oh, so your job as a practitioner is to bring them to whatever state it is that helps them find the particular movement to break through.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just small movements. Sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes it'll just be very small, like nuanced movements that will be the biological completion. It's not always something that big and some big discharge, but sometimes it is. And some, because we release trauma from our bodies through heat, shaking, and tears.
Oh.
So, anytime, like I might have a session with the client and they're crying the whole session. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold a really safe space for them to be able to comfortably release whatever needs to get released.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is really fabulous. Because like I was saying, Olivia, one of her friends that was infertile got pregnant after a somatic session.
Well,
I think, wow.
Yeah, because what we're doing is we're really working with the stress physiology in the body. And so, we're working with the autonomic nervous system. So the system, the part of the nervous system where all of our functions in our body that we're not really having to do much, like breathing, heart rate, digestion. All those are parts. That's our autonomic nervous system. And our autonomic nervous system has two branches. It has sympathetic, which is like fight or flight. And it has a parasympathetic, which would be more like a freeze, right? When fight or flight doesn't work, our systems go into a freeze. And the goal is you need both systems for survival, but you want the autonomic nervous system to be working in harmony. So you want both pieces, like we need to, let's say we need to go and get out of the house and go do something. That's our system mobilizing. It's safely mobilizing. Or we need to sleep. That's rest and digest. We need that system too. So we have to have them working in harmony. But when you've had a lot of trauma, your system is either that survival physiology, one way or another, generally gets stuck on. So you're either functioning in this fight or flight physiology, right? Which is like your system's always in this overactivation. When fight or flight doesn't work, what do? You go into a shutdown. So, or like, a lot of times the people that look so mellow, they're really inside, they're frozen. They've had so much that there's so much angst that the only way they can survive is by disconnecting. Yeah. Fascinating, right?
Yeah. I feel that way sometimes. Like I just have to shut my mouth and be quiet, Well,
are you just going inward, or are you like freezing and going into dissociation?
Probably going inward, praying and breathing. And I do Qigong.
You've done a lot of work. I can tell.
Literally breathing my way through the day and reading and all that. So anyway, I thought that somatic healing or the somatic experience had to do with moving energy, like, because I do Reiki, or is it breath work also, or how does that involve?
Well, we might do some breath work in there, right? Because everything that we're trying to do is we're trying to settle down the autonomic nervous system. So, right, there's a lot of different exercises we can do in the process. So I might give a client an exercise, like something as simple as a self-hug exercise. I might give them an exercise like a VU exercise, which I can share with you, which would be something that would help with the vagus nerve.
Sure.
So it just really depends on what's needed and where a person's system is. So I'm kind of really working to meet the client where they are. But like the VU exercise is basically, we're just VUing. We're basically grounding ourselves, finding a comfortable seated position, and then we're taking a deep breath in and we VU, and we do that. Yeah. And so what it does is it works with the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, which works with our autonomic nervous system, and it works to regulate it. So there's different techniques we may use. But the big idea is that we're going to work with sensation, imagery, behavior, affect, and meaning to really release that trauma energy from the body.
What do you find the most common traumas? I mean, because I think a 6-year-old, like your experience at being 6, that I think is quite remarkable, which pretty much makes me feel like you're an old soul.
I definitely am an old soul, and I definitely figured out early on how to be resourceful. I think don't give enough credit to trauma as this event, but it can really be a series of chronically stressful experiences that accumulate in the nervous system. And when the bottom line is when we don't feel safe, our systems go offline. And so a lot of times people will come into my office and they'll say, but I don't have any trauma. And I'll say, well, tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up for you. And they'll say, yeah, nobody in my house ever talked. When I got sad, everyone would tell me not to cry. So those are things that are very stressful for a child.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with an alcoholic parent, but my dad was never home. So all those things create stress for the nervous system.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, it's really, I think we're really uneducated about some of the things that can really impact how we're functioning as adults. And, this word trauma is thrown around and is definitely overused. So I just like to use the word I just like to say, well, let's talk about chronic stress. What was stressful for you in your childhood?
That's a great way to flip it, because everybody has that, right? Everybody has stress.
Did you feel safe as a child? Who is your safe person? Oh, I didn't have anyone safe. That gives me a lot of good information.
Got it. That's so cool. And you've been doing this for 5 years?
Been doing this for about 5-6 years, maybe 7 years. I started down this journey. I got introduced in 2000, I think 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's like 8 years. So do you see clients just locally, or do you see them online as well?
No, I've got clients all over the world.
Really?
So, yeah. And it's because, I can work remotely as long as I can see the person. It's really easy to kind of figure out what's going on with the body and watch the nuances.
Are you intuitive?
I am. Yep. It's funny because this intuitive piece is something that's really coming online for me right now. And it's opening me up in a way that I didn't even know was possible. So yeah.
Oh, that's
it's
fun.
Pretty wild. Are you intuitive?
You know what? I've been told I am, but sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not, so I've taken classes to develop my innate whatever is there. And I've been told by many people that I'm an old soul. I just don't remember. That's my biggest problem. I have a hard time remembering. So, but the last 2 or so years have been a massive, or actually probably 4 years, have been a massive spiritual journey for me. And I'm opening up to possibilities that I would have thought maybe 5 years ago, oh yeah, that's a bunch of BS. You know what I mean?
I do. Because when you start tapping in there and you realize how deeply we're connected to what we don't see. It's pretty powerful. I've recently gotten into the psychedelics because I always think, I'm curious about it, and I want to make sure that whatever I'm choosing, whatever I'm recommending, that I really understand it. And I've really noticed that that's opened me up too in a different way.
Now, did you do like one of those? So I had a guest on the show that they do these retreats like in Costa Rica or in other countries. And they walk people through experience. And I can't remember what it's called, like Rapacin or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, there's so many different options. No, I've done all my psychedelics in what I would say is a very safe environment, close to home. That felt right for me. I think it's different for everyone. I think you have to go where you're called.
Okay. I've never done it, so I have no idea.
It's pretty trippy. It's pretty wild what you get to see and experience.
Is it scary?
Yeah, but I think that's like the big thing about it. Like I wanted to do them because I want to it really does teach you about breaking through fear. That's the big messaging that I keep getting, is that this is about letting go and about moving through the fears that keep us gripped.
So it's a therapeutic process. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah. I mean, they're all there. This is not recreational, like just going out and having a trip. This is about, although that's always fun too, but this is really about healing at a different level and really healing your nervous system.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never, the only thing I remember is seeing like Goop or something like that with, was it?
Oh yeah, she did the whole thing with she did a mushroom. There's a mushroom journey on one of those episodes.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Yeah, that came after I think the vagina episode.
Oh my God, that was such
You
a
see that
trippy
one?
show. I saw the whole first season. I don't know if they did another season.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing what she's bringing to light to people.
Yeah. Did they have a second season?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I watched the first season though too. I hope she did a second season. I'm gonna actually go check.
yeah. I think that takes some pretty big balls to talk about the stuff that they did on the show.
It was bold. It was bold. I give her a lot of credit.
So let's talk a little bit. I want to respect your time, Ilene. So let's talk a little bit about your book. When did that come out?
Okay.
What would you say is the takeaway?
So the book came out, when is this 2000? I'm like so lost with COVID on time. I guess it was 2020, May of 2020. And the book is really about helping the reader understand what's not their fault. And really, there's a series of assessments in there to help the reader piece together how their nervous system is functioning. And then I give exercises, that people can start doing to start moving on, moving into this idea of a healing journey. So, it's a pretty great tool if you're kind of living your life and you're like, something's wrong and I just don't understand why. So yeah, and I'm getting ready to write a second book now.
Cool. What's that one going to be about?
So this book is more about a personal healing journey. And my husband is now, it's just coming up on, it was just came up on 6 years that he's gone. And so the story is about this journey through my marriage, because we were married 6 years, and the journey of healing that happened after he passed away. Because the last 6 years have been like profound. And I realized there's so much I want to share, and so many lessons that I think are important for other people to have this information and knowledge about how to really move through life and let go and create and manifest and call in what you want, because it's possible.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I've been married 32 years.
Wow. It's a long time.
I know. I feel like I don't know anything before. I don't remember anything before him,
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's like, that would be horrible. Well,
yeah,
you just never know. So where you said people can buy your book on Amazon, what is it called?
It's called Moving Beyond Trauma. And my name is spelled Ilene and last name is Smith. So if you just put Moving Beyond Trauma in, once you get to Amazon, it pretty much comes up. And you can also find me on Instagram. It's Ilene Smith Healing. Again, it's Ilene Smith Healing.
Cool.
So good places to find me, or my website, which is ilenesmith.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
And then what would you like, what's the biggest takeaway that you would want to inspire the listeners to, like a little nugget?
Healing is possible if you're committed to the work.
Okay. So just be committed to.
Yeah. And the other piece also, there's no quick fix. So, I've been on this healing journey for 30 years, and it's like, it's now where I'm at 53 is where I'm reaping the benefits of 30 years of taking small steps and walking that walk every day to get to a place where I feel more balanced.
And what was the quote you said earlier about going slow is fast, or something like that?
Oh, the slower you go, the faster you get there.
That was a great quote. Did you make that one up?
I'm sure I've heard it somewhere along the way, but obviously it stuck with me. And it's very much how we work in somatic experiencing, because, people will call me and they'll be like, how many sessions will I need? And I'm like, if you're asking me that question, then, if you're already ready to exit before you even got started, because, this is a slow process. But what I know is that it works, and it's a cumulative process. And so anything that you think is going to be a quick fix is not going to work in the long run. It does not regulate your nervous system. Nervous system regulation has to happen slowly.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like you got to where you are at overnight. So how do you expect to get out of where you're at overnight?
So true. So true. It's a really good point. It's funny. I say that to my clients too. I'm like, this is 30 years in the making. Like, it's not going to get undone in 10 weeks.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Ilene, you are a beautiful woman. I love your energy, and I'm so thankful that this worked out, that we could chat today. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, that was super fun. I would love to go to Arizona and have a session with her, or perhaps do one of those online sessions. But from what I know, you guys, somatic healing can help people create some really amazing results. So for complete show notes, please head on over to highenergygirl.com/show. And also on Amazon, check out our book, Moving Beyond Trauma. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Make it a great day. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion, and I could be wrong.